Thanks for tuning in to Sports by Jared. If you want to stay up to date on NBA news, hit the like and subscribe button, turn on your notifications. I want to talk about the Washington Wizards and their offseason so far. I think they did really well in the NBA draft, picking up Denny Avdija and also getting Cassius Winston late in the second round. I think Denny Avdija fits in really well with their current lineup. I think he was a depth pick because I don't think he'll start directly for the Wizards next year, especially with the shortened off season. But I think he's a guy who can step in at the 4 or step in at the 3, and he can also play next to Rui, Bradley Beal, and John Wall. I'm looking at if I'm the Wizards, I'm looking at the John Wall and the Russell Westbrook trade. I would actually make that trade if it's actually available, because I think with what Russell Westbrook was able to do, bringing the Oklahoma City Thunder to a 7th, 8th seed in the West, I think if he comes to the East, he could definitely get the Wizards to a top 3 or 4 position. Him and Bradley Beal would be like a slightly poor man's version of him and James Harden in the East, but it'd be enough to give them the best backcourt in the East, which would go a long way, especially with their young pieces up front. They would have a really good chance of competing with any team in the league, especially in the Eastern Conference, and they would definitely get back to the playoffs. While it would be kind of hard trading John Wall because he's so immersed in the community, I think coming off the injury, you at least know Russell Westbrook has been healthier throughout the years, and he'll probably give you a full season, whereas you don't really know if John Wall will give you a full season or not. If John Wall ends up on the Rockets, I think he's a better fit next to James Harden because he's more of a passer than Russell Westbrook is. Even though Russell Westbrook can pass, he's more of a scorer who, if everybody's trying to stop him from getting to the basket, he can definitely dish the ball. Where I think John Wall is probably one of the top 4 or 5 passers in the game. You put him next to James Harden, they might go on a run depending on what teams are hurt or what playoff position they are and who they have to play. They could easily make it back to the conference finals in the West. Well, the East is always open, so having a lineup of Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal could propel them to the conference final, even though they wouldn't be the favorites to make it, with the East loading up more on talent than they have in years past. But even if they do come back with John Wall, you can look at a lineup with John Wall, Bradley Beal, Rui, probably Troy Brown, and Thomas Bryant might round out the center position if they don't pick up somebody in free agency. If they do reach out to get a center, I wouldn't be too surprised if they try to get 2 guys that have recently played with them before, and a Dwight Howard or a JaVale McGee. As you might know, Dwight Howard came to the Wizards, but he was hurt all year, and he never really got to play with John Wall, but he's a pretty good fit next to John Wall, especially with John Wall's passing. John Wall does really good with the lob-catching big man. I think Thomas Bryant has shown he can do well offensively, but they do need a defensive big, which I think there'll be plenty of defensive bigs available on the market. While the Wizards don't have a whole bunch of cap space, they have just enough to pick up somebody on a mid-level exception that can really round off their roster. I think the biggest thing keeping the Wizards back from being contenders now is just rounding off the bench. The bench isn't too bad, but they are relying on a lot of young players to actually fill out and contribute in their role. Maybe they might be able to find some guys who are excelling in the G League to be able to do well for them next year. But look out for them to be one of the teams that was out of the playoffs to get back in the playoffs. They might not do as well as maybe the Atlanta Hawks, for instance, but they will do good enough to be maybe a 5 to a 7 seed. I think those 5 to the 8 seed in the East are wide open. And now with the play-in game, you can finish at the 10 seed and still work your way into the playoffs, which worst case scenario then a 10 seed. And that's barring injuries. I don't think they'll hit the injury bug this year. Hopefully John Wall's at full strength I've seen him in a lot of videos looking good. So look out for that team this year. They could be one of the teams to surprise, or they could at least minimally sneak into the playoffs, which would be good for them considering the last 2 years they've been a non-playoff team.